Casting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
This is more than just an obscure Shia-Sunni conflict. This is al-Qaeda. And al-Qaeda is not on the road to defeat. Al-Qaeda is on the march, not just in Iraq, in Syria and Libya. And we have real enemies of the United States, and what we should be looking for are friends. I think when we stick with our friends, and those friends are not always perfect, believe me, but we stuck with the Kurds for 20 years. Northern Iraq, Kurdistan is a success story. We stuck with South Korea for 60 years. South Korea is a miracle story. But if we had walked away from South Korea in 1953, that country was a basket.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. That, of course, Paul Wolfowitz. Joining us now is David Tafuri, and he's coming to us from Erbil, Iraq, former rule of law coordinator for Iraq at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and partner at Patton Boggs law firm. David, thank you for doing this with us. Really appreciate it, sir.
Sure, thank you.
All right, your take on the latest, and you know, we're seeing these videos. It seems like this ISIS group is not only succeeding militarily, they're waging a propaganda war. They're releasing videos showing executions, and it just seems so well coordinated.
Well, it's shocking how quickly this happened. Nobody is surprised that ISIS attacked places in Iraq, but the fact that the Iraqi army surrendered so quickly and that so many areas and cities seem to be falling quickly as well is shocking. The ISIS thugs that came over mostly from Syria is a small group, but they're battle-tested, they're experienced, and they've been able to wreak havoc here in northern Iraq.
Well, where do you see them stopping? I mean, another city fell today, as we've talked about on this show, and I hear that there's resistance in Baghdad, and that they've kind of pulled back from that goal for now. But what do you hear? What do you know? And what do you think will happen?
Well, they're certainly not going to stop until they're confronted militarily. I think it's very unlikely that they could take Baghdad. But the Iraqi army has really failed to prove itself so far. We don't really see it being reinforced yet. I do expect Prime Minister Maliki in Baghdad will reinforce it, but that may not be enough to clear ISIS out of the places where they are already. They're becoming entrenched there. So I think they need outside help. The Prime Minister needs outside help, and he's asked for it.
The sectarian violence, if you will, the Sunni, the Shia, you know, the president talks about that needs to be solved from within. What are the odds of that actually being solved from within?
Well, it was certainly possible a few years ago. Iraq had a really good chance. The current Shia-led government in Baghdad has really failed to include the Sunni Arabs and make them feel comfortable, give them sufficient voice in the government, include them in the military. That's part of the problem. We may have gone a step too far now. I don't think Iraq will be the same after these events. I don't think ISIS will stay. I think they'll be cleared out, but this will have a major impact on Iraq and its ability to stay unified.
All right, you talk about confronted militarily. That's when they'll stop. You just said you think they'll be cleared out eventually. Who's going to do this?
Well, I think certainly the Iraqi army is going to have to be in the lead and play a major role. That means they're going to have to be reinforced. You have the Peshmerga forces in the Kurdistan region. They are very effective. They proved themselves able to fight Sunni insurgents in the past. And it's a very strong, effective force. They have not engaged yet. They're certainly on the ready. They're protecting the Kurdistan region, including the area where I am right now. I think they'll probably be involved, or at some point need to be involved. And I think everyone's waiting to see what the U.S. is going to do. The U.S. has had a long history here in Iraq, spent a lot of time building up the Iraqi army. I think some engagement by the U.S. and support is going to be needed.
And what would you like to see? If you could suggest, because you know, nothing's really been done yet as far as we know, what would you suggest to be done? Are we talking about airstrikes? I mean, where do you strike? Who do you strike? Have we missed that moment? Was the moment for that when the original request allegedly came in from the Iraqi government, or is it not too late for that?
Well, I mean, we're really behind the eight ball here. We should have gotten involved in Syria supporting the moderate opposition there. Had we done that, ISIS would not have grown as strong as it did. This problem really needs to be addressed not just in Iraq, but also in Syria. So it needs to be a comprehensive solution, engagement by the U.S. and its allies. Likely some air power has to be involved, certainly more training, not just for the Iraqi army, but also for this moderate Syrian opposition who are also fighting ISIS in Syria. So a comprehensive solution, more engagement by the U.S. and in both places, Syria and Iraq.
All right, here's the $64,000 question. You heard John Kerry today say that he'd be willing to talk to Iran about working together. The State Department later clarified that it would not involve military cooperation, but Lindsey Graham doesn't think it's a bad idea. Most everybody else I've heard from seems to think it's a bad idea. What are the possibilities in your mind, and what would it lead to if it happened, of U.S.-Iranian cooperation for this problem?
Well, you know, cooperation is always okay. I think it would be a major mistake for Iran to be engaged in any way beyond diplomatic cooperation. I think it would be a huge mistake for Iranian forces to have any involvement in Iraq. Iraq is already a canvas for a sectarian battle, and that would certainly escalate things if you know, the Shia supporting Iranian regime got involved.
All right, so talking is fine, but working with them on the battlefield would be a no-no.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, so where do you think, we got about a minute left, where do you see we will be in the next few days by the end of the week? Where will ISIS be, and what will they be doing?
It's really hard to predict. This place is a powder keg right now. As you mentioned, more areas and cities have fallen. There hasn't been a significant confrontation yet with ISIS, but they're a small group, not many fighters, and I think they can be confronted. But I really don't know how that's going to happen. Certainly, the stakeholders that I mentioned have to be involved. I suspect that in some of the areas that ISIS has taken, there will be a backlash from the people in those areas. Even the majority Sunni Arab areas, the Iraqi people really don't support ISIS. I think they're just looking the other way right now.
Right.
I think you'll see a backlash from them, including from some of the tribal leaders and political leaders in those areas.
David, stay safe. Thank you very much. I hope you'll join us again, sir.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Thank you. David Tafuri, ladies and gentlemen, coming to us from Erbil, Iraq, former rule of law coordinator for Iraq at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Very, very interesting conversation from a man who has been there and knows the landscape. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to the NBA champion San Antonio Spurs. Don't go away.